deadly 2000 season, multiple fatal crashes in one year. The year 2000 stands as one of NASCAR's darkest, marked by an unprecedented string of fatalities across its top series. On May 12, 2000, 19-year-old Adam Petty, son of Kyle Petty and heir to the Petty racing dynasty, was killed during a practice session for a Busch Xfinity series race at New Hampshire when his throttle stuck and his car slammed hard into the Turn 3 wall. Less than 2 months later, on July 7th at the same track, Kenny Irwin Jr. died in a nearly identical Turn 3 crash during Cup Series practice, eerily echoing Petty's accident. Both young drivers suffered basilar skull fractures, highlighting glaring safety shortcomings at the time. Then, on October 13th, Tony Roper, a Truck Series driver, was involved in a violent front-stretch wreck in Texas and succumbed to a severe neck injury, NASCAR's third on-track death in 2000. Each loss shook the garage, yet racing continued on schedule even as grief and fear spread among teams. In the aftermath, NASCAR faced intensifying criticism for its reactive approach to safety. Only after these tragedies did officials implement changes such as kill switches to shut down stuck throttles, mandated in August 2000, and encourage use of head and neck restraints. The deadly 2000 season became a somber wake-up call, exposing a culture that had long normalized fatal risks. It remains a taboo topic on broadcasts, a reminder of lives lost and lessons paid for in blood that year. Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s fatal crash, 2001, and safety revolution. The death of Dale Earnhardt Sr. on the final lap of the 2001 Daytona 500 is perhaps NASCAR's darkest and most pivotal moment. In a last-lap collision, the 7-time Cup champion's car struck the wall head-on, and Earnhardt was killed instantly from a basilar skull fracture. The sport lost its biggest icon in an event televised live to millions. Yet to this day, broadcasts avoid replaying the crash or delving into its graphic details. Controversy followed when NASCAR officials initially deflected blame, claiming Earnhardt's seatbelt had broken. A rescue worker publicly disputed this, stating the belt was intact when he tried to unbuckle Earnhardt. Subsequent investigations confirmed the belt was not the cause. Earnhardt died from the violent head whip of the impact, a preventable injury mitigated by better restraints. Earnhardt's death, the fourth driver fatality in a 9-month span, finally forced NASCAR's hand on safety. Within months, the sanctioning body mandated the HANDS device, head and neck restraint, for all drivers and accelerated installation of safer barrier walls. It also ushered in safer car designs and stricter crash data analysis. These measures have prevented any driver fatalities in NASCAR's top series since, a remarkable streak. Still, the tragedy remains a sensitive subject. Mainstream coverage like Fox tends to celebrate Earnhardt's legacy, rather than revisit the painful details or NASCAR's prior negligence, making this seminal incident both a turning point and a somber cautionary tale. Tim Richmond's AIDS scandal and untimely death, 1980s. Tim Richmond was a talented, free-spirited Cup Series driver whose career and life were cut short under a cloud of stigma. In 1986, Richmond won 7 races, but by 1987 he fell mysteriously ill. It was later revealed he had contracted HIV/AIDS, a fact concealed at the time due to widespread fear and prejudice. NASCAR's handling of Richmond's illness remains controversial. In early 1988, as Richmond attempted a comeback, NASCAR suddenly suspended him, citing a failed drug test for banned substances. Richmond vehemently denied illicit drug use. An independent test showed the only substances in his system were over-the-counter medications like Sudafed and Advil he took to manage his condition. His family later alleged the drug test was falsified, essentially a cover to bar Richmond from competition because officials feared his AIDS diagnosis. Richmond was reinstated only if he disclosed his medical records, which he refused in order to keep his illness private. He never raced again and tragically died on August 13, 1989, at age 34 from AIDS complications, with the truth of his condition only becoming public after his death. The episode cast NASCAR in a harsh light for besmirching Richmond's reputation, effectively using a phantom drug scandal to sideline an ailing star. It wasn't until decades later that Richmond's talent was posthumously honored. He was inducted into the International Motorsports Hall of Fame in 2002, but mainstream coverage still tiptoes around the painful details. Richmond's story remains a dark reminder of how fear and prejudice once overruled compassion in NASCAR. Jeremy Mayfield's drug bust and downfall, 2009 to 2014. Once a multiple race winner and playoff driver, Jeremy Mayfield is now remembered for one of NASCAR's most notorious drug scandals. In May 2009, NASCAR suspended Mayfield indefinitely after he tested positive for methamphetamine during a random drug screening. Mayfield denied using meth, blaming a combination of a prescription Adderall for ADHD and over-the-counter Claritin D for a false positive. A bitter legal battle ensued. Mayfield obtained a brief injunction lifting the suspension, only for NASCAR to win on appeal and reinforce the ban. During the feud, Mayfield made wild claims, even accusing his stepmother of murdering his father, and insisted on his innocence, but evidence mounted against him. In court filings, NASCAR revealed Mayfield's test indicated a dangerous, illegal substance. Sources confirmed it was meth. The dark saga took a criminal turn in 2011. Acting on tips, police raided Mayfield's North Carolina property property and found a cache of stolen goods, dozens of firearms, and bags of meth residue. Mayfield was arrested and later indicted on multiple felony counts. In 2014, he pleaded guilty to possession of stolen property and drug paraphernalia to avoid further jail time, receiving 18 months probation and hefty fines. The former driver, effectively exiled from the sport, has since attempted a humble racing return on local dirt tracks, but mainstream NASCAR media rarely acknowledge his downfall. Mayfield's rapid descent from cup contender to convicted felon remains a sobering, seldom discussed cautionary tale of drug abuse and personal ruin. Kurt Busch's domestic violence allegations, 2014 to 2015. In late 2014, NASCAR was rocked when former champion Kurt Busch was accused of a disturbing act of domestic violence. Busch's ex-girlfriend, Patricia Driscoll, alleged that he grabbed her by the throat and slammed her head into a wall inside his motorhome during a September 2014 race weekend at Dover. The investigation became national news and downright bizarre. During a family court hearing in January 2015, with Driscoll seeking a restraining order, Busch testified under oath that he believed Driscoll was a trained assassin, claiming she would vanish on covert missions and once returned to him in a blood-stained evening gown. Driscoll flatly denied the outlandish story, calling it a fabrication from a screenplay she'd been writing. The judge, however, focused on the assault claims and issued a no-contact order, concluding that Busch, more likely than not, committed an act of domestic violence against Driscoll. NASCAR, facing its first major domestic abuse case, suspended Kurt Busch indefinitely just days before the 2015 Daytona 500. Busch became the first driver benched under NASCAR's new behavioral policy. A few weeks later, Delaware prosecutors announced they would not file criminal charges, citing insufficient evidence. Following that decision, NASCAR reinstated Busch on March 11, 2015, after he completed a reinstatement program and was placed on probation, even granting him an exemption to remain chase eligible. The entire episode, a high-profile driver, shocking allegations, and spy novel twists, was a PR nightmare NASCAR prefers to forget. It's rarely mentioned on broadcasts, even as it underscored the sport's fledgling efforts to address domestic violence seriously. Tony Stewart's deadly sprint car incident, 2014. On August 9, 2014, three-time Cup champion Tony Stewart was involved in a tragic on-track incident that mainstream NASCAR media seldom revisits due to its grim nature. Stewart was competing in a dirt track sprint car race in upstate New York when he tangled with 20-year-old Kevin Ward Jr., causing Ward's car to spin into the wall. Ward exited his wrecked car and, in a fit of anger, walked down the live track gesturing at Stewart's approaching car. In a nightmare scenario, Stewart's car struck Ward, throwing him down the track as horrified fans watched. Ward was killed almost instantly from a massive trauma. The incident sparked immediate controversy. A toxicology report revealed Ward had marijuana in his system, which prosecutors suggested might have impaired his judgment. A grand jury declined to bring criminal charges against Stewart, deeming the death a tragic accident rather than intentional. Ward's family, however, believed Stewart was culpable and filed a wrongful death lawsuit claiming the NASCAR star had swerved or blipped the throttle to intimidate Ward, only to miscalculate. Stewart steadfastly maintained he never saw Ward on foot until it was too late, and that he tried to avoid him in the split second he had. The civil case dragged on for years, revealing conflicting expert analyses of sprint car dynamics and throttle data. In 2018, just weeks before trial, Stewart quietly settled with Ward's parents out of court, avoiding further public spectacle. The fatal crash and its aftermath deeply affected Stewart, who called it a life-altering tragedy. It remains one of NASCAR's darkest chapters, often sidestepped by TV coverage due to the upsetting visuals and the sport's reluctance to reopen debate over Stewart's actions that night. NASCAR CEO Brian France's drunken arrest, 2018. In a scandal that rattled the sport's leadership, NASCAR chairman and CEO Brian France was arrested on August 5, 2018 on drunk driving and drug charges, an embarrassment mainstream partners prefer to gloss over. France was pulled over in Sag Harbor, New York after blowing through a stop sign. Officers found him visibly intoxicated and in possession of 5 oxycodone painkillers without a prescription. His blood alcohol level was more than twice the legal limit, qualifying as an aggravated DWI under New York law. The news made national headlines. France's mugshot quickly circulated, casting harsh light on the sport's top executive. NASCAR issued a terse statement about taking the situation seriously. Within a day, France announced he would take an indefinite leave of absence, effectively stepping down as CEO. His uncle, Jim France, assumed interim control, a role he continues to hold, as Brian France never returned to the helm. The fallout was significant. France pleaded guilty to misdemeanor DUI, June 2019, completed community service and treatment, and the charges were dismissed afterward. But the damage to NASCAR's image was done. Fans and stakeholders lambasted the irony that the man who enforced strict conduct policies for drivers had himself run afoul of the law in such dramatic fashion. Since 2018, NASCAR has largely moved on under new leadership, and Fox and other broadcasters rarely, if ever, mention Brian France's name. His drunken arrest, the CEO in handcuffs, remains a dark, humiliating episode the sport's powers are keen to leave in the past. Rick Crawford's child sex crime crime conviction. 2018. Perhaps the most abhorrent scandal in NASCAR's history involves a retired driver and a crime far outside the racetrack. Rick Crawford, a former Truck Series veteran who scored 5 wins in his driving career, was arrested in 2018 in an FBI sting operation for attempting to solicit sex with a Over the course of February 2018, Crawford engaged in online conversations with an undercover agent he believed to be a father, offering access to his 12-year-old daughter. He negotiated a price of $50 to $75 to the child and graphically described how the girl should be and ready for him. When Crawford showed up at the meetup spot on February 28, 2018, with $80 cash and a condom in his pocket, federal agents arrested him on the spot. The disturbing details, including Crawford carrying lubricant, an emergency contraceptive pill, and in his vehicle, sent shockwaves through the racing community. In August 2018, a federal jury took only 2 hours to find the 60-year-old Crawford guilty of attempted enticement of a minor for sexual activity. On November 26, 2018, he was sentenced to 130 months, nearly 11 years in prison, along with lifetime offender conditions upon release. NASCAR immediately scrubbed Crawford's name from any association he had been on a driver advisory panel. This horrifying episode is virtually never mentioned on broadcasts, a taboo subject due to its heinous nature. It stands as a grim reminder that behind the scenes, even a former NASCAR competitor was capable of unspeakable crime, casting a long shadow over the sport's reputation. The 2004 Hendrick Motorsports plane crash. On October 24, 2004, tragedy struck one of NASCAR's premier teams in an incident still remembered as one of the sport's darkest days. A Beechcraft King Air 200, owned by Hendrick Motorsports, crashed en route to Martinsville Speedway, carrying team, family, and personnel to that day's Cup race. The aircraft went down in heavy fog against Bull Mountain in Virginia, just 7 miles from the Blue Ridge Airport, killing all 10 people aboard. The victims included Hendrick's only son, 24-year-old Ricky Hendrick, a former Busch Series driver and heir apparent to the organization, team president John Hendrick, Rick's brother, and John's twin daughters Kimberly and Jennifer, legendary engine director Randy Dorton, general manager Jeff Turner, DuPont executive Joe Jackson, and Scott Lathram, a pilot for Tony Stewart, traveling with the group. The 2 Hendrick pilots, Dick Tracy and Liz Morrison, also perished. The crash occurred as the Martinsville race began, won by Hendrick driver Jimmy Johnson, but officials withheld the news until the checkered flag fell. The announcement devastated the garage area. Team owner Rick Hendrick and his wife Linda, who were not aboard, were left to endure an almost unimaginable personal and professional loss. Accident remains one of NASCAR's darkest hours, mentioned mainly on anniversaries and in solemn retrospectives, even as the team has gone on to unprecedented success. LeeRoy Yarbrough's downfall. From Daytona winner to tragedy. LeeRoy Yarbrough was a star of NASCAR's late 1960s, a Daytona 500 champion, 1969, who also won the Southern 500 and became the first driver to win NASCAR's Triple Crown of superspeedway races in a single season. But his life unraveled in heartbreaking fashion. After his spectacular 1969 season, Yarbrough endured a series of hard crashes, including a violent test crash in 1970 that left him with serious head injuries and recurring memory loss. By the mid-1970s, his behavior had grown erratic, suggesting undiagnosed brain trauma. The darkest moment came on February 6, 1980 in Jacksonville, Florida, when Yarbrough, then 41, attempted to strangle his 65-year-old mother while they watched television, saying chillingly, "I hate to do this to you." A younger relative intervened by striking him with a glass jar, saving her life. Yarbrough was charged with attempted first-degree murder and aggravated assault, but a judge declared him incompetent to stand trial due to his mental condition. In March 1980, he was committed indefinitely to a Florida state mental hospital. His health never recovered. Yarbrough remained institutionalized until December 7, 1984, when he suffered a seizure, fell, and sustained a fatal head injury. He was just 46 years old. Yarbrough's descent from record-setting Daytona winner to institutionalized patient is one of NASCAR's most tragic cautionary tales, illustrating the long-term dangers of head trauma in an era before modern safety advancements. His legacy is a mix of triumph and tragedy, a story seldom spoken of in NASCAR circles because of its unsettling nature. Do you think NASCAR did enough to honor the drivers and confront its mistakes, or did they bury the darker truths? Let us know below. Thank you for watching the NASCAR Explainer.